Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose. Welcome to Natick Springtown election season. And welcome to our first candidate guest speaker, Cody Jacobs, who's running for a select board seat. Happy to have you with us, Cody. Seeing back in our history, we had you when I believe you were running for the same position back in 2022. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I've been here for a few times in between there too for other things too.
Right. Good, good. Okay. So our protocol just for your benefit as much as ours. We always have people just do super brief introductions of themselves so you can see super thumbnail how folks are engaged with the town. But please be brief, folks, so we can give Cody as much time as possible. Kathleen, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. Cody. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm on the Library Board of Trustees, volunteer quite a bit with the Keep Natick Beautiful, and just delighted to hear what you have to share with us this morning.
Thanks, Kathleen. Bill?
Ditto with Kathleen, active with Keep Natick Beautiful on the CPC board. I think you know me through that, and active in church. So welcome, and want to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Bill. Frank?
Yeah, Frank Voss, town meeting member of Precinct 10 and interested party.
Yeah. And chair of the Hybrid Town Study Committee. I actually didn't realize you were chairing that. That's cool.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yep.
Cindy?
Good morning. I'm a 5.5-year resident of Natick. I help keep Natick beautiful. I sing in sound and spirit, and I maintain the Takawambe Trail.
Thanks, Cindy. Karen? Yes, got to come off mute. Yeah.
Sorry, Karen Edelman Foster, town meeting member, precinct 6, and interested party.
Thanks, Karen. Sally?
Good morning, Cody. It's really good to have you. And I'm part of Pat Conaway's Keep Natick Beautiful. And I'm also your neighbor because I live with upstairs in my brother Pat's house. But really look forward to your contribution and what you have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Janji, and if you can rename yourself when you get a chance, but
Yes.
introduce yourself first. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about this. I have a kind of difficulty today morning. I just came back from the ski trip late evening yesterday. I'm still a little tired and sleepy. But anyway, good morning, everybody. My name is Jean Molnar, and I'm 26 years residents of Natick. I really enjoy this community. Part of the Lutheran Church on Union Street, and I'm contributing to different public and civic events through the church.
Thanks, Janji. Carrie?
Hey, good morning, Cody. Nice to see you. 23-year resident here, semi-retirement. I do property management, maintenance, and handyman work, and Keep Natick Beautiful, Repair Cafe, Natick Rotary. So never a dull moment.
Thanks, Carrie. Kate? Oh, still on mute. There you go.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kate Stanton. I've been a Natick resident for about 12 years at this point, just starting to get involved.
Thanks, Kate. Rick? Rick might be away in the computer. We'll go to Alan.
Morning, everyone. I'm Alan Cantor. I moved to Natick last May, so I'm always the newest in this group. Very interested. Thanks.
Happy to have you. Andrew? You made...
Good morning. My name is Andrew Gabriel, Natick Town Clerk. I'm not a resident of Natick, but I'm just an interested party here to see a little bit of this before my next meeting.
That's good, and it will be recorded, so you can review the full thing later if you want.
Awesome,
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
Brinley?
Good morning. I'm also a 26-year resident of Natick. 2 kids, one through the system, one still in high school, town meeting member, have served on committees. Also on the hybrid town meeting committee with Frank. I think most of you know me. Thank you for being here today, Cody, and thank you for running. I'm always very appreciative when people step up. It's amazing how much of our town runs on volunteers. So I'm always grateful for it. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Binley. And Donna.
Hi, I'm Donna McKenzie, and I'm a long-term resident of Natick, former school committee member, a town meeting member for Precinct 8. I've been on several town committees. I love this town. I can't imagine not being involved in it. Great to be here. Look forward to hearing what Cody has to say. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Donna. And I'm Doug. Sarah and I have been here 40-something years. I moderate this group and do most of my volunteer work with the Congregational Church. So great. Well, Cody, thanks very much for joining us. The floor is yours. If there's anything you want to screen share, go ahead. That features should be turned on for you. So. And also, if you could just, however you want to handle questions, if you want to just take them as they come, we'll use the raised hand feature to the extent that we can. But if you want some speaking time and to hold questions for a while, that's fine too.
No, my plan was mostly to do questions. Actually, I've got like a 1-minute spiel here, and then once I get through that, I'll cede the floor to questions because I'd rather have this be a discussion. I really appreciate you inviting me, and the fact that Coffee with a Purpose does this every election season is a huge public service. So I really appreciate it, and not just election season, but obviously hosting conversations like this throughout throughout the year. I think it's really helpful for the community. So appreciate it. Always happy to talk to you guys. So for those who I haven't met yet, as it's already been said, my name is Cody Jacobs, and I am running for Natick Select Board. Like many of you, I am a local government volunteer, most recently as secretary of the Finance Committee. And I've worked with neighbors and town leaders to make progress on important fights like building affordable housing, making our budget sustainable, and protecting Natick from federal threats. Let's face it, this is a difficult time in our country, but I think that makes it more important than ever to show that local government can still do good things for people. I think all of us in this Zoom room know that that's true because we've seen it here in Natick, and we have opportunities in front of us right now to build on the things that we love about this town. Our great neighborhoods, our wonderful schools, our thriving business community, and our beautiful open spaces. If I'm elected to the select board, my top priority will be improving affordability while preserving and enhancing our quality of life. I will advocate for real affordable housing, for revitalizing our public spaces and protecting our environment, for attracting community-serving businesses that grow our tax base, and for keeping Natick safe and welcoming for all. I know that the Select Board works as a team of 5 in close collaboration with town administration, town staff, and other boards and committees. And I'm committed to working collaboratively and learning from my colleagues while also sharing my own perspectives and expertise. I know that through building trust, hard work, and a pragmatic approach that real progress is possible. Again, I thank you guys for, so much for doing this, and I welcome your questions. So no screen to share.
You weren't kidding,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just want to talk to you guys. So yeah, that's that. If you want to find out more, of course, you can go to my website. I think Brinley put the information in the chat. But
right.
I really just wanted to make this a discussion because I want to hear from you. So
yeah, great. Go ahead. I see Donna is the first with her hand up. Go ahead, Donna.
First, thank you so much for running, Cody. I was excited when I heard that you would be running. And I have a question, and there's no I have no agenda or anything with this question. I'm just seriously interested. Can you talk about how you understand your relationship as a select board member, what that would be like with the police? And I'm specifically interested because I've always been interested in this question, and I go back and forth on it on the school resource officers. We have school resource officers and we have police in our some of our schools, and I sometimes have questions about that. So can you offer some comments on the relationship between the select board and the police and maybe say something on our school resource officers? Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think the select board, I think one of the select board's most important jobs is, that it does provide kind of leadership, or well, not the leadership because the chief provides the leadership, but you know what I mean, that the select board, one of the things that the select board does for us is make sure that the police are serving the community and are, they even, are, because of the way that our system of government works, they're the ones who actually, ultimately hire police officers in the town. It's recommended by the administration, but then the select board, technically approves it. So, I personally, I can tell you about my own experience, and I'll talk a little bit about, how I think the select board should approach it. But I've worked with the police on a lot of issues. I've worked with Chief Hicks in particular, when I worked on the immigration policy. I met with Chief Hicks quite a bit, and he is someone who I have a lot of respect for, who's, focus on community policing is something that is well known nationally and even internationally. So I think he's been a real asset to our community, and that's a relationship that obviously, as a select board member, I would like to continue to be, working very collaboratively with him. I think that the select board does have a responsibility to be oversight for the police, just like it is for other town departments, and to make sure that we're on the right track with things. And I think that's very important. Because it is a position of extreme public trust, and we want to make sure that our police, the approach that we have to policing in Natick reflects our values. And I think that's something that the select board, as our, democratically elected body that's overseeing the police, has a responsibility to do. As far as the school resource officers, I've had questions about that before for, some of the same reasons. I am a parent, but also I do recognize that the school resource officer program is the result of a memorandum of understanding between the schools and the police. And so ultimately, from my perspective, that would be a school side decision, right? As far as, any changes or adjustments to that program. I think certainly like it has a lot of positives. I think especially the people who are in those school resource officer positions are incredible people, from everything I've heard from my kids, from folks who work with them and things like that. And so I think that, that doesn't mean that we can't ask questions about institutionally about whether, the program is working or things like that. But it definitely, I think the people in the program have made it where a lot of community members really value it. But again, I think ultimately that the decisions about that, I think ultimately rest properly with the school administration and the school committee. But on the select board side, I think the importance is collaboration, but also oversight as far as the police go.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your answer. I just am, always curious. And I know you have, and I have appreciate the thoughtfulness you've given to the whole immigration and community policing and all of that. And I mean, I think you're correct. It is a memorandum of understanding between the police and the schools that's responsible for that. And I'm probably going to have an animal control officer here in a minute. If I have these unruly dogs, then you're going to hear them barking in the background.
Oh my
That's
God.
why I jumped in with my question, not because I thought it was necessarily the most important, but I thought I could skirt off their barking. But I do appreciate your thoughtful answer. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you, Dr. McKenzie, and good luck with that.
When Donna mentioned immigrants, couple years ago now, the whole issue with the town adopting like a immigrant welcoming resolution. I've forgotten what. I know we vacillated on the name that we called it for a while, and there seemed to be some tension around what was the select board's responsibility versus what was the police department's responsibility. A more recent example of that, maybe this thing to do with the flocking cameras or
Yeah.
their surveillance pilot around town. Without taking us down a rabbit hole of kind of what that whole thing is, because I honestly don't understand it. Are you acquainted with with the camera issue at all? Is there any thumbnail you can give us, and do you glean anything from that about kind of the responsibility and cooperation lines between police and select board?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think the flock camera, I was actually going to mention that when Donna asked her question a moment ago, because I think the flock camera issue is a perfect example of the system kind of working in a way about the select board, what I was saying about the select board's role as both collaborative and also at providing oversight in the name of the community. Because I think the flock camera situation, so just to, again, I know it is a rabbit hole, so I'm not going to spend the whole time talking about Flock, but it's a network of cameras that it's a brand of these these license plate recognition cameras that many communities and private businesses have, where they take a picture of the license plate and it goes into a database that shows like, oh, this license plate was at this intersection at this time. And then the problem, or I guess the benefit, depending on your perspective, is that it goes into a giant database that all the police departments in who are participating and all the agencies that are participating have access to. And so, a police department in Texas could use it to track someone in Massachusetts, for example. There's a lot of privacy concerns associated with that, civil liberties concerns, and again, I can go into more detail if you want, but that's the background of it. But Natick, the police department had participated in a trial program, a free trial, where a few of these were set up around in different locations around Natick. And I, among with other people, were very concerned about that for the reasons mentioned. And we contacted the select board and we talked to them about it. We explained our concerns. It was actually a pretty widespread, across the spectrum, people who were concerned about the privacy implications of this. And the select board heard us. They had a meeting about it, and they asked questions, they gathered data, and ultimately they voted to discontinue the trial, which I think was the right decision for Natick. And I think it again shows kind of an example of what I'm talking about, where the select board can provide helpful oversight to make sure that what we're doing on policing is consistent with our values. Now, all that said, I definitely don't think that the police, in signing up for that trial, were trying to do anything wrong. I think their intentions were good. They didn't share any data from Natick with outside places. In fact, one of the conditions of the trial was that they wouldn't. So I don't think that was I think the intent was to enhance our safety in policing. But I think that ultimately the data privacy risks associated with it, even if you have that agreement on paper, the select board, I think, correctly thought were too great and discontinued the trial. So I think it's a good example of, kind of it's scary. So I hate to say like, oh, the system works, but like, I think in Natick, I think that was a good example of the type of oversight I was talking about in the answer to Donna.
Mm-hmm. Good. I'm seeing other hands up. I've got questions I'll continue with, but folks jump in. I've got a question about kind of how does the select board, or how would you envision the select board kind of staying in tune with the pulse of the town? Those of us on Facebook and probably other social media platforms as well, obviously see that there's no end to opinions about whether town officials are doing things right or wrong, and associated with that kind of what their agendas are, or how are they in tune with what the citizenry of Natick wants? Do you have any thoughts about how will or how should the select board stay in touch with what the common person on the street in Natick is, what matters to them?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I mean, I think it's an ongoing challenge in local government. Obviously, not unique to Natick necessarily, but it's certainly something I've seen in Natick that I think it's hard for people. There's a group of people who are very, very engaged, and it's great. Like you guys were saying, when you were doing the introductions, this town runs on volunteers, and so I think there's a group of a couple hundred people who are very engaged, but the other 36,000 something who live here, a lot of them I'll talk to and they don't even know what the select board is, let alone have opinions about the things that we're doing. So I think that I think it's a big challenge. I think the town has made strides in recent years, especially since we got our communication director, Jay Propatich, who I think is doing a really good job trying to, do things, basically capture people where they are in different ways. I think, spreading on social media more about what we're doing and agenda items that are coming up that might be of interest to people. I think we've done a pretty good job of that, but we can probably do more. I think that the flash vote has been a great thing. By the way, if you're not signed up for it, if you just Google Natick flash vote and sign up for it, it's this great tool that Jay has put into place where they'll have issues coming up that are on a select board agenda or something else, and they'll ask people, a series of quick questions about it to get a sense of, it's one tool. It's not something to be relied on exclusively, but it's another tool to get people where they are, which I think is what we have to do. The other thing also is, just getting out there in person. I really like that, they've had like these in-person events for things like the Johnson feedback, the Johnson workshops and stuff like that, I think have been good. I'd like to see more of that. I think that's good when we get out there in person and meet with people where they are. I like the select board does office hours every week. I believe they have someone at the farmers market. So that's another opportunity where you can hear from people and learn what people are thinking. So I think that all of it's kind of has to be all of the above, and we have to keep trying at it. There's no magic thing that's going to get everyone engaged with local government, but I think it's something that we have to keep working at. We have to keep working at and see what we can to do what we can to meet people where they are.
Thank you for that. Catherine, I see you've got your hand up.
I do have my hand up. Hi, Cody.
Hi.
You and I met once a few years ago. You probably don't remember.
No, I do remember. I totally remember. Yes.
Okay, well, we don't have to tell everyone.
Okay.
I would love to sit down with you and have coffee one-on-one sometime in the near future if you're open to that too. And I'm glad to be here. I have good intentions of showing up on these every Monday, and then Mondays at 9 seem to be really, really busy. But I'm really glad this worked out. My question is, have you given any thought to keeping Natick affordable for senior citizens, such as me? I am like shocked by my real estate tax bills that come in quarterly now. They're just sky high, and it's really not affordable. I have lived in Natick for 31 years, in this house for coming up on 23, I think. I've poured my heart and soul into gardening in my yard and planted trees and, peonies and all these things that I love. It's like my place. And the thought that I might not be able to stay here, really, it's upsetting. I think I know during the override when this topic came up, the town and people were advocating for the program that Natick has, where people can turn their houses and defer real estate taxes, and the town will let you do that, and then up to 50% of your equity. That is not a good idea for many of us, because then when you need to sell the house and you have only 50% of your equity to maybe move to a place, and I know my attorney would say no to that. So that's not on the table, but then what? Because we're going to be looking at, my little house, if you remember it, my real estate tax bill quarterly is over $1,700 a quarter. That is just shocking. And nothing else is keeping pace with that in my life in terms of finances. So, have you thought about that? The affordable housing units that have been created in this town are about as affordable as places you can rent in Natick Village currently. So I don't really even think they're so affordable, which is a huge problem. And I think, it's hard. You probably don't have an answer, but I hope you can think about it, because it's not really fair for seniors to be priced out, especially people who have lived here longer than I have. I'm coming up on 31 years, so I really am old. But it's a serious issue in my life. And, I'm current with my bill, but it's really not easy to keep up with it. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I mean, I definitely think it's one of the biggest challenges that we face as a community. And I think it's something that is definitely really important to me. I mean, I remember during the override having a lot of conversations with people where, very similar to your story, where they say, yeah, like I love our schools. I want to support the town. I want to vote yes on this, but I just can't afford it. I just can't afford to pay higher property taxes. And, it's a bind that municipalities end up in because prices, because the costs keep going up so much, but then you end up putting that on people who can't afford it, and that's a real problem. So I think to me, you're right, Catherine, that I don't have an answer because it's a very difficult problem. But I think to me, where I would start is a few things. So number one is I think that, now that the override has passed, I think as a community, we have to work really hard to make sure that we're honoring that by, using our resources wisely, that we're, scrutinizing the budget on the town side, that we're working collaboratively with the schools on their side so that, we can not have to hit the voters with another override for the foreseeable future. Because I think that's the number one thing that we need to avoid if we want to keep Natick affordable for people like yourself who are trying to stay here and obviously, contributing so much to the community. So I think to me, that's one thing is we need to be really deliberative about that. We need to look for opportunities to save money. For example, like we're, just to give a few things, like we're looking at things like how we do trash collection. We're looking at, the consolidated dispatch center is going to save us money as well. So things like that where, we can see opportunities for savings, we can see opportunities for consolidation where, we can put less pressure on our budget.
Well,
I think,
can I
sorry.
mention? Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead, of course. Yeah.
No, the trash collection thing is worrying me too. I really value that service in Natick. I know other towns don't have it. Wellesley is adamant that they don't want it because of the look of trash barrels on the street. I've heard that comment in a Facebook group, which really I think is ridiculous. And but if that is removed, and during the override, period, it was sort of a threat that if we don't get the override, we might have to remove trash collection. I consider that a basic necessity of a service. And now I'm a little nervous because I know they're, looking at it and maybe they'll say we can't afford it. And so that it might not be, it might not end up being a cost cutting thing. It might end up adding cost for individuals if we have to go to paying for our own trash collection. So, I'm paying attention to that.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I'm not saying that, I totally hear what you're saying. I'm not saying do away with trash collection. I'm just saying reviewing that though, looking at the system that we have in place and seeing where there are opportunities. There may be in other words, I guess what I'm trying to say is there may be something between getting rid of trash collection and keeping it as it is now that could potentially, be a savings to the town. That's all I'm saying about that. I just think we need to look at everything really carefully. And, again, anything that we cut is bad, right? Because any cut is necessarily right. So it's like we're trying to look for things. What are the least painful types of cuts we can make so that we're not putting as much pressure on the budget. The other thing I want us to look at really is healthcare costs. I think that's one of the biggest drivers of our budget. Right now we're in a collaborative with other communities that does help us get slightly better prices on our health premiums. But if you look at the budget line items, it's one of the things that has gone up the most overall, and it puts a huge pressure because essentially, like the town is, one of the biggest. The biggest expense for the town is paying our employees. So, we're those benefits, those healthcare benefits are costing us a lot of money because of the skyrocketing cost of healthcare. And so I want to see us, see what we can do about looking into options that might, again, and I'm not saying, again, just like the trash thing, right? I'm not saying don't provide employees with healthcare. I'm saying, let's look for ways that we can, collaborate with other municipalities and things like that to bring costs down. Because I think that's important. But I wanted to answer another part of that question though, because I think there's two sides to the equation. There's what can we cut? What can we save money on? What can we consolidate? But then there's also the part of how can we grow the pie? How can we encourage the type of growth that will give us more, that will grow our tax base, so we're not putting pressure on homeowners with, under how Prop 2.5 works. So I think to me, the other side of the equation is what can we do to encourage the types of development that, bring businesses here and things like that that grow our tax base that allow us to take some pressure off of homeowners because with the way that Prop 2.5 works, it's almost it's almost zero sum, right? In the sense that you're paying more because the levy amount is what it is, and so if we spread that amount over more over more residents and more businesses, then the amount can be less. So I think the idea is that, to me, we need to make sure that we're a place that is encouraging different types of economic activity that can not only bring things we want in Natick, right, businesses that we like, but also can help us take some pressure off of taxpayers. So to me, I think it has to go both ways. And then the third thing is, can we look at other ways to raise revenue? Are there other revenue drivers that can help us? Things like the meals taxes and the hotel taxes and stuff like that. We've gotten some off. We've been doing pretty well on that, but we might be able to do better. So, and there might be other tools available to us, especially with different legislation that's pending on Beacon Hill that would give municipalities more options for different revenue streams. So I think we need to look at all of the above to try to tackle it. But your initial thing is right, Catherine, that I have a lot to say about it, but I don't have like this is a great answer. So I'm happy to talk more, though. Like you said, if you want to get coffee sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to, but I also want to just say, I feel like
Catherine, if I could interrupt just for a second, there's other folks with their hands patiently in the air. If we could move to them and then swing back, that would be great. Rick, I think you were the next person.
Okay, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Cody. I have several issues, and I'll only bring up ones that I think might be of general interest here. But I do first just a quick follow-up curiosity question with a quick answer. When the town along the trash, thing, this is a minor cost, but I'm just curious, when the town recognizes a road, okay, which I'm not sure I'm using the right word, recognize, but it becomes a public road.
Yeah.
Does that include those residents in town trash collection if they weren't already? Or like I'm thinking of, for instance, near us, there's a development that opened a couple of years ago, Wayside. And I noticed that Wayside Road, I think, was either up for recognition or was just recognized. It's a very wealthy community for the most part and not small. And I just wonder if, like the one I'm in, South Natick Hills, is not a recognized road, and we have our own trash collection and so forth. And residents have, that's in your HOA. That would be one way with the development of, high-end, real estate coming into town to sort of keep that expense from growing. And I may be talking about minor money here, but.
No, I mean, every bit helps. I don't know the details about that. I don't think that it's tied to street acceptances necessarily. I mean, I lived in a development when I first moved to Natick that was kind of set off condos and had its own trash collection that was separate from the town. But yeah, I think those are somewhat decoupled. Like I think you can live on an unaccepted road and still have town trash. But you're right, though. I mean, for these new developments, especially that are brand new and kind of almost either literally or figuratively kind of gated communities, maybe that's something to look at. But yeah, I don't know the details, so I don't.
Okay, all right, okay. So my other question is just something I don't think I understood as well as I need to, and that's on capital budgeting. There's a pot of capital. And I'd heard that it was quite limited this year in the town, and the town administration had been pushing back on how much, capital expense could go anywhere. And then lately, I'm hearing that there may be more money that can be spent. So I'm a little confused about that, and I'm confused about whether. I don't think the school has its own reserve of capital, right? I mean, they are tapped into the town in terms of capital, correct?
Yes.
So anything you can do to talk about that briefly? I just find the topic a little confusing recently.
Yeah. So I think it's a good question. So we do have a lot of capital needs. So just, for people who aren't as, day to day into this, basically what we mean by capital needs is like things that are sort of one-time expenses that we need to pay for things, right? So we, pay for a new police car, or we pay for, whatever, like to fix an elevator in the library. Like those are capital expenses. So,
Right.
we have a lot of capital needs in Natick, and we haven't, the amount that we've been able to spend on capital has not kept up with our needs, unfortunately. Like many things, we're trying to streamline, we're trying to do what we can to save money. This year they've started having a system where they sort of have what they call tier 1 and tier 2 projects. So like tier 1 are things that they feel have to get done right away, and then tier
I was
2 are
aware of
things.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so like so they're trying to prioritize and get the things done that they think are the most urgent, which I think, obviously is the best approach that we can do. As far as, when you hear about it sort of shifting as far as, oh, well, we thought we could spend this much and then we could spend that much. I think part of that has to do with how capital is financed. So, we try to use, they're trying to do as little borrowing as possible, because the more that we put on borrowing, the more that puts pressure on obviously future budgets, right? Because you have to pay it back. And so, we're trying to use free cash first and foremost, for capital expenses, because that's, a source of money that is sort of one-time funds. And so it should go to like this kind of one-time use, right? And so basically it's like it's kind of like we're looking at, okay, how much do we have? I don't want to say left over, but it's sort of like that where we're trying to say like, okay, like what do we have to spend, after we're looking at the things that are recurring expenses. And so, in that regard, they're trying to like see like, okay, what can we fit in? And things do shift, right? The other thing that I learned a lot being on the capital subcommittee, on the finance committee, is that a lot of this isn't just about money. A lot of it is about staff availability and time, right? There's projects that you could fund that we wouldn't be able to do just because we don't have the staff for them. And then they're not trying to, appropriate money or borrow money for a project that, we're not able to start, right? And so I think some of that is sort of shifting to where they have staff availability and things like that change. And so that's why things can sort of come on and off of being a capital request in a given year. But I think it's definitely a big challenge because, a lot of these capital investments are things where it's like, you kind of, if you're not careful, if you don't make the right investments now, it can cost us a lot of money later, right? You don't fix the roof of a building right now with minor maintenance, then you're going to have terrible maintenance later when you have to replace the whole roof, right? So, things like that, I think are really important. And so that's, I think they're doing the right thing by, trying to prioritize, but we have to definitely be looking at ways to make sure that we're properly funding our capital program.
Okay, I think I have other questions, but on this topic, I'll leave to talk with you specifically another time.
Okay, yeah,
feel
free.
Catch up this month sometime. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Maybe out holding signs on a.
Yeah, that email that Brinley put in there, it goes directly to me. So definitely.
Right.
Anybody who wants to
Thank
chat.
you. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah,
thanks. Cindy, I know you had your hand up and then you just lowered it. Do you still have a question? Or?
Yes. Yeah. So, hi, Cody. Thank you very much for coming this morning. I'm in my head. I'm a renter, and I'm like to maybe buy something. And I'm curious how to think about the sort of the issue of there's houses that are not in great shape, and they're not being very well maintained, and the people who live in them are probably not young. And yet when they come on the market, they get torn down, and then the only way that a developer can afford to make any money is to build a big house and sell it for a lot of money to somebody who can afford to pay a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they want their kids to go to really good schools. And it occurs to me that there might be people who are renting who might be able to afford something like that and pay, money over a period of time to fix up something. And it's kind of I can see that it's contradictory, because Natick wants a bigger tax base, right, to be able to afford.
Right.
So how do we, and And so I always have to remind myself that when people talk about affordable housing, we're talking about publicly funded affordable housing. We're not talking about just simply, as Catherine was saying, just making my own house affordable, or making a house that if somebody wants to own a house their own way, to have it be affordable.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm
And
glad
I
you
don't
brought
really
up.
know how to think about all this. So I'm
Yeah,
interested.
yeah, and I'm glad you brought up. I'll come back to the thing about the houses sort of being flipped, but the last thing you said, I did want to come back to that because I didn't get to say that in Catherine's question because I think that was important. Like the I think that's absolutely right that the affordable housing is not affordable, and that's a big problem, right? Like when you talk about, these, and that's not to say it's not important because I think we need to grow our housing stock, period. We have a housing crisis in West, in Metro West, and
Yeah.
more options are great, right? So I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but when you have these units that, for example, like there's a new building or something, and there, some percentage of the units have to be affordable units, that's great. But the affordable units are what they are 80% AMI, which is 80% area medium income, which is about $80,000 a year. It's not affordable for quite a few people who, who would think of as hopefully being able to be eligible for affordable housing. And so to me, like, that's why it's important to me that we not only look at that kind of affordable housing, but we try to support actual nonprofit affordable housing developments. Working with the Affordable Housing Trust and nonprofit groups, those are where you can have units that are really actually affordable, like 30% AMI units and stuff like that. And so to me, I think that has to be part of our approach to affordable housing. But going to your question, I mean, I think what you're asking about is really difficult and something that, I certainly see in my own neighborhood where people, I live in West Natick and in a somewhat older house from most of that development I think was built in like the early 70s. But I see anytime someone sells, exactly what you said is what happened, right? They tear it out and they build a pretty large house that is very nice, but doesn't always fit the character of the neighborhood. So people don't always love it for that reason. And then also it's not something that people are able to afford. And so it's hard. There's limited regulatory tools that we have as a municipality to deal with that, right? Because people can, ultimately, if it's zoned as single family, people can do what they want with their land, right? And so there's limited things we can do. I hope though that we could look into tools that could discourage that kind of behavior. Many municipalities have filed home rule petitions to try to have some kind of a real estate transfer tax for very high value properties that kind of discourage that kind of behavior and also allow the town to at least reap some sort of benefit from people who are ultimately, like you mentioned, profiting from the town, right? Because it's the thing that makes those properties so valuable is our schools that we've invested so much money in. And so, we should get something back for that. So, that's something I'd like to see, but again, that's sort of up to Deacon Hill really to do that, not us. So I can't say like, oh yeah, we should do that. But I think like that, I think that kind of thing is how we have to be thinking about this if we want to actually discourage it. Because you're right, for developers, it's such a money-making opportunity that it ends up being what's incentivized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one follow on. Is there anything that the town can do? I was very surprised to learn through the questioning about the Elliott Street development, the school, that the state law for affordable housing, that the percent, that's going to be affordable, it's by law just 20 years. And then it fades away, and then those apartments are no longer affordable. And I remember that the developers for the Elliott School said that one of the criteria for them taking on the project was that they promise that those units that are affordable will remain affordable permanently.
Right.
And does the town have any way of, when there's something like that going in, to say, okay, we know the state law is X, but here in Natick, It's got to be permanent.
Yeah, so I don't know that as far as a private development goes, so I don't want to answer the question
Yeah.
without knowing. I'd have
Yeah.
to learn more about that. As far as these nonprofit developments, especially where we're in the case of Five Auburn, right? Like we control the land, so we can negotiate and things
Yeah.
like that, right? There are ways we can do it, right? So they can put it in the deed that it's in perpetuity, right? Which is what they're doing with 5 Auburn Street. So I think again it kind of just goes back to what I was saying about these two kinds of affordable housing, that they're both called affordable housing, but there's a huge difference between private development affordable housing that we have kind of less control over and isn't really as affordable anyway, and nonprofit affordable housing. So I don't know the answer to. I would hope that we could do something like that locally, but I'm not sure the legalities of that. So it's something to I would look into.
And just to be clear, when you talk about affordable housing in both of those instances, we're still speaking about rental affordability. Is that right?
Yes, we're still speaking about rental affordability
Okay.
in both of
Okay.
those instances. Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
That conversation, clearly, affordable housing has got many dimensions and is a huge issue. Brinley and then Frank. Brinley?
Yeah, thanks. Um, so Cody, I run into you a lot downtown at watching select board meetings and through your years on FinCom, and I'm curious if you would like to explain how you prepared to be a select board member, because a lot of these questions are important, but a little bit esoterical when it comes to the actual day-to-day function of what the select board does. And I would love it if you wanted to spend a minute just talking about the experience on FinCom and what that gave you in terms of running, being a select board member, and all of the times that I know that you're down there watching select board meetings, and so how prepared you are to actually do the day-to-day job of being on the select board.
Great question.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I think it has been, so I guess I'll starting kind of with the end of that, of just like I have been attending especially since I knew I was going to run again, like I started really attending the meetings. I attended them sporadically before that, but I've been trying to attend basically every meeting so that I'm up to speed and kind of ready to go, and know what's going on and what's coming before the board, and kind of just understanding the culture of sort of the day-to-day operations of it. I've talked to every member of the board. I've had coffees with and sometimes multiple meetings with over the course of the last few months, and I've had relationships with some of them at least prior to that as well. So just kind of understanding those dynamics and things, I think, is one thing. As far as finance committee, I mean, yeah, it's super the experience on the finance committee has been super educational for me. I think because of the nature of how the finance committee is in our system of government, it essentially sees everything. It's called the finance committee, but that's a little bit of a misnomer, because it reviews every single article that comes before town meeting. And so, we see zoning, we see bylaw changes, all those kind of things. And so it's helpful from, not that all of those things are select board items per se, but it did help me to see like the bigger picture of how our government works. It also helped me to get to know and kind of understand the roles of different people on our town staff, which is something that I think is going to be important to me as a select board member, to be able to have relationships with, not only with Jamie, but also with, the people who are our department heads. Like I worked with John Marshall a lot, who's the deputy town administrator for operations when I was doing the capital subcommittee work, things like that, Claire Rondelli, who's, all these different people that you get to kind of have conversations with and learn from on the finance committee, has been really helpful. And then, yeah, just, kind of preparing for the role for me has just been asking a lot of questions. I kind of, I'm in those meetings and I'm just writing notes, and I keep sort of I keep a running Google Doc that then, I ask, I ask Catherine or Bruce or somebody, questions afterwards of like, what did this mean? What was this about? How do you handle that? So, that's kind of how I've been preparing for it. And I think I've just learned a lot on the finance committee too, about just like working with people and, kind of, being collaborative and finding ways to get things done in our system.
Thanks for that. Frank.
Thank you. Hey, Cody, how are you?
Good.
Been a while since we talked.
It has.
And you know what? When we talk, you ask me a lot of questions. Now I get to ask you a few questions, which is great. I want to swing back, if I could, where Catherine Dorham was about when she talked about the budget and affordability and whatnot. And I'm of the opinion, and you mentioned one thing, was that, you would seek to where there are opportunities to raise taxes and things like that. Or look at alternative ways to raise revenue. Let's put it that way. I think that's more of what you said. But I've always been of the opinion that economic development is one of the best ways to raise revenues. And we have an opportunity, or we've opened the door through town meeting with the opportunity to develop West Natick, as well as other areas in our town. And I want to get a sense of where you're at, because now the boilerplate has been set up with the zoning, or at least the beginning of it. Where now would you, as a select board member, want to see our town go? And I guess how you would do that. And I have one other question, which is kind of an adjunct to this, but I'd love to hear what you think about that, Cody.
Yeah, thank you. I think to me, I'm very excited about that. Actually, I think I agree with you. Like, I think it's a great opportunity for the town. I live in West Natick, like right basically where this is going to be happening. I live on Tamarack, which is sort of right behind, for people who don't know, it's like right behind the West Natick train station. And so I think it's great. I think we can get a lot from it. That was part of my answer to Catherine too, was the idea that development is something that can really help the town, take some of the pressure off financially. And so as far as, what that looks like and what the select board's role can be in that, I think that it's important for us to understand the market. I would want to work with our, community and economic development staff to really understand, okay, the types of businesses that might be attracted to a place like that, and sort of what can we do from a select board and town administration perspective to help facilitate that, right? And whether that has to do with our approach to different kinds of licensing, or whether it has to do with other types of things like that. I think looking at our, which is something the select board's been doing really intentionally a lot over the last several years, right? Of looking intentionally at our policies and kind of thinking about, okay, how can we line this up to sort of meet the market where it is? And some of that is, is about use and things that are more, within the province of the planning board, but that I think again, working with our, community and economic development staff, I think as a select board, we can, sort of help move forward in a positive way. Because to me, I think that's what we have to do is, we don't, because I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert on real estate development or anything like that. And I feel like, to me, I would want to learn, okay, what is it that we can do that is going to be helpful to, bringing in the types of amenities that we want. Because I think, getting people to build housing there is going to be easy, right? That's easy money. I think the thing that's going to be hard is, can we get the real mixed use with amenities and the type of businesses on the bottom of these developments that we want. And so that's how I would approach that.
Frank, before we move to your adjunct question, just for the benefit of everybody else, is it possible, Cody, to give a super thumbnail sketch of what is the framework that Frank was referring to? What did town meeting adopt?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
With the zoning, what's likely to change, or yeah.
Yeah, no, I should have started with that. Yeah. So West Natick, so the area basically along 135, leading into Framingham, from sort of from basically where Roach is to Framingham. That area was, recently at town meeting, they proposed sort of a rezoning to parts of that area. And the way that it works is they sort of have taken this subzone approach, where the places that are closest to the West Natick train station are zoned for pretty intensive development, where they can, or relatively intensive, where they can have up to a 4-story building, with, businesses on the bottom, and then residential development on top. Places a little a couple lots further out, they have kind of lower intensity uses where it can't be quite as tall, but they can still have some mixed use. And then further out from that, it can be only residential, but can be like duplexes and things like that. So that's the idea, is sort of to make better use of that area. Anyone who lives down there, there's a big complex that is right next to the train station that is closed and has been closed for some time. And so, this allows an opportunity for that to develop. And so things like that. So that's what Frank is referring to.
Thanks. Frank, go ahead with your second question.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. It's kind of adjunct to this, and it again, feeds back to Catherine's question, I think. Is it, as a select board member, you're elevating yourself away from budget review and everything and getting really into the policies, our fiscal policies, which also has an effect, could have a great effect. And I saw this, and I spoke to this during the override. How, in your opinion, do you believe the financial practices and policies that are in play right now, do you believe that they should be fungible, or that they should be written in stone and never be changed?
Well, I would say that's a good question. I mean, I would say it's got to be somewhere in between that, right? I mean, I think it's not really a policy if we just change it every time we, right? I mean, and also I want to be clear about what we're talking about with financial policies, because I think there's financial policies with respect to how we run our, how we, at a staff level, right? Like a finance department level, how we run the money, right? Like how we keep track of things, how we report things and things like that. And I think those policies need to be, pretty stringent and pretty, maybe not set in stone, because they're always subject to review, but I think they need to, be followed in order to build public trust, right? That was something that, as we talked about a lot on the finance committee, of trying to get more, clarity and transparency around that, with our finance department. We have a new finance director. I think we're, moving in the right direction. But the other type of financial policy, I think that maybe you're referring to, is more of like a, I don't want to say policy setting policy, because that's redundant, but like sort of a budgetary policy of like, okay, like if we, like I was talking about earlier, right? Like if we have free cash, we're going to spend some of that on capital, right? Like that's an example, right? The free cash policy that the select board adopted recently, right? And I think those kind of policies, like, yeah, like I think you want to make sure that I think it's important for us to try, because we're sort of making a commitment to the community, right? Of like, this is how we're going to approach it. We said that we're going to spend free cash on capital because this is important to the community, and so we're going to do it, and we're going to follow through on it, even if that means that we're, making difficult choices in other areas. That said, a lot of stuff happens, right? There was a pandemic, right? So like you never know, like when things can happen that can change how you have to approach things, because you always need to do what's in the best interest of the community. But I think it is in our community's interest to have, transparent financial policies and strategies. That's what I should have said. Strategic policies that we're sticking to, so that we have sort of a long-term vision, and we're not just like plotting our way from year to year. So it's a difficult question, but I think that's how I would look at it.
So do you feel what we have right now is sufficient? Or do you think it needs to be reviewed and changed?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think I need to learn more to really say for sure. I mean, I'm certainly open to that it needs to be reviewed and changed. But I'm not sure that I could say right now that it's insufficient.
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah.
Appreciate your
So
time.
quick shout out to Brinley, who, as Coffee with a Purpose regulars know, constantly populates our chat with relevant links relative to the conversation that's going on. She just included a definition of the word fungible for anyone that might not have had the same vocabulary that our ex-moderator has. So thanks for that, Brinley. I've got two questions. I don't see any other hands up just yet, but the first one is what I'll call the Jay Ball question. When we first started doing these candidate forums, Jay and Ricky Ball would attend pretty regularly, and Jay would always find a way to ask the question of how do candidates balance what they think is best for the town versus what they're hearing from the residents. It kind of goes back initially to my very first question, but just, obviously, as I think Cody's amply demonstrated, he brings a huge amount of knowledge and expertise, and I don't want to say insider knowledge, but a lot more facts to any issue that has to be decided. Apologize for my phone ringing. Hang on a second. And then everybody in the town has got their opinions, and for some types of issues, what the town wants is really important. But if they're not as well educated on a particular issue, then maybe that isn't the right decision. So just Cody, how would you approach the issue when you might seem to be at odds with what you're hearing as a prevalent opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Jay did ask me that 4 years ago, so I do remember that. But I think to me, I think that the voters always have the final say, right? The voters always have the final say at the ballot box. And so if you do something that you think is in the best interest of the town and then the voters don't agree, they can vote you out. And I think I think it's important that you listen, of course, right? Listen to everyone, take into account and be serious, be intentional about it, take into account what everyone says. But at the end of the day, I think that, all elected officials should make the decision that they think is in the best interest of the town. And so to me, like that's how I would approach it, is I think like you listen to people, you make sure that you're listening to a variety of perspectives, that you're doing the homework to understand the facts behind a decision. But then, you make the decision that you think is in the best interest of the town. And I think, kind of it actually goes back to like the first question about, how do we know what people think about things in town. I think there's a tendency to think like, oh, if you're at a public meeting and there's 30 people who all want to yell at you and say this is a bad idea, that the town is totally against it. Or even on Facebook, that there's a lot of Facebook comments saying this is a bad idea, everyone's against it. But you don't really know that, right? You don't really know that that's representative of the town as a whole. And and again, even if it is, I think ultimately sometimes you do have to make decisions that are unpopular, that are necessarily still the right decision, or at least that you think is the right decision. And again, the voters always have the final say, because that's how our country is supposed to work.
Good answer. Bill, I see you've got your hand up. Just got to find your mute. There you go.
Hi, Cody. I have a question. You were talking about the capital campaign expenditures and using free cash. Is there any process where they look at return on investment and the total costs of projects and trying to fund the ones that are most cost effective? Is that part of the process? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do know that they look at they look at a lens through like long-term planning of like, okay, how long is this asset going to last, and like what will its what will its useful life be, and what do we like, basically when depending on the decisions that they're making, for example, about like what type of because we've had these conversations about vehicles before, right, where it's like, oh, like could you save money on this piece of equipment by buying a used piece of equipment, for example. And so they'll look at like, okay, we did price that out, and we think that it's a better investment long term to buy the newer piece of equipment because it'll last longer or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. But I know those types of things are done at least at that level. But I don't know if it's like if it's looked at in an ROI way, in the way that you're necessarily referring to, as far as if we're looking at, for example, like we're looking at I mean, I think they do like looking at like maintenance costs and things like that. But I think that it is looked at, but I'd like to see it a little bit more, maybe transparent and maybe formalized.
Yeah, I think it probably relates more to the work that Jillian does, where you actually can save money over time. And then it just needs to, I would expect and hope that the long-term costs rather than the immediate costs are taken into account so that you get the best return for your money. That was one. I have a sort of another one. My background and career was in internal audit. And I think the town is probably too small to have an internal audit position, although Jillian certainly proved that one person can make a difference and bring money into the town.
Yes.
And I'm also, I believe the financial audits that are done are not operational, that they're strictly financial. Do we comply with the state and local laws? But don't get into those questions around, are we getting the maximum dollars or benefit from our tax dollars? I know the departments do that, and I'm not being critical of anyone or anybody, but sometimes an external look can see things that might not be available or obvious to the folks running the departments. So I just wondered if any consideration is that either expanding the audit that's already done or hiring someone that would focus literally on trying to make the operations of the town more efficient.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that well, first of all, you're right, right? The way that you characterized it is correct. The audit, we do an audit every year, financial audit that we're required to do by the state, right? But it does not include like an operational audit of the type that you're talking about. I'm certainly open to the idea. I think I am always a little skeptical about like consultants and things like that, right? About the idea of, because I think sometimes we can spend too much money on that and then, it just sits on a shelf and we don't do anything with it. And then it's like, well, okay, like why do we do that, right? But I'm open to it. I mean, I think like I said in the answer to the question about affordability, like I think anything we can do to, make our operation be more efficient is a good idea. So it's certainly something I'm open to. I'd want to look at like what the pricing structure is of something like that for a town, what makes sense for us. Would it make sense to hire an internal person whose entire job was that, or would it be, would it be a consulting firm, or would it be something else? But I'm open to it. I just, I don't feel like I know enough about the business to really say like, yes, we should absolutely do that. But I think it's, if it's something that can help us save money and be more efficient, like I'd be open to it.
Thanks for that. Donna, and then after that, Paul Carew. Donna.
I just wanted to mention that first before my comment. That's why I had to have my sound down.
There it is. Yeah.
There are ways that towns can shelter seniors and vulnerable people from tax increases, but Natick has consistently chosen not to do that. Other area towns do it, and people will say things like, well, I don't think we should have to pay for people to keep their houses or whatever. I think that's important to look at all things that can be done. There is a property tax circuit breaker on a local level that can be offered by communities, and I think that is important to look at periodically. I want to mention that Natick, you might not know this, Natick is in the process of becoming certified as an Alzheimer friendly community, which I think is an interesting proposition. I don't know a lot about the details of that or what's involved in that, but I wonder if there are other thoughts on how we can make Natick, I apologize for that, more friendly to people who suffer from disabilities. I mean, that was such a difficult issue in wrestling with Johnson School, that we had a school that was not handicapped accessible. Once the walls were opened, all kinds of other expenses would come in, and there was such terrible payback from this. And how I am curious about this Alzheimer friendly designation, but are there things that we can do to help people who navigate our streets, who are I don't know, differently abled, or to make ourselves really an opening and welcoming community? I mean, some people rely on walkers or wheelchairs, and in some cases, the sidewalks are really uneven, and they're not great for using a walker or a wheelchair. So I just wonder if you've given any thought on, I guess, accessibility and making ourselves as accessible and friendly as we can be. And I just wanted to mention the Alzheimer's things. I don't know if people knew about that. I just recently learned about it myself.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know. This is the first time hearing about the Alzheimer's thing. That seems like a good thing. But I definitely I appreciate the question, and I think it is really important about accessibility. And what I would bring that back to from a select board level is that I want to make sure that as a member, one of my priorities would be making sure that we're as a town recommitting to our equity goals. Because we got some great, we did some great work on that several years ago. There was a task force of citizens that worked together of residents in Natick to come up with, a set of recommendations that the select board, at the time was behind. And I think that we want to make sure that we're recommitting to those, that we're looking from an equity lens at every aspect of our government, including the exact things you're talking about are great examples of that, right? Like when we're thinking about street improvements, when we're thinking about our capital improvements, are we thinking about making those things accessible to people, to all people, right? Regardless of whether they're, persons with disabilities or otherwise. I think that's exactly why it's important to have voices for equity in government, because we need to have dedicated voices for equity in government, because we need to be able to look at things from that lens, because and it's not always nefarious, but sometimes it just doesn't happen because people are focused on what's going on in their particular department or their particular area. And so I think, to me, from a select board level, that's something that I would want to make sure that we're committing to and that we're recommitting to, because I think it's important for exactly the examples that you gave, Donna.
Thanks for that answer.
Thank you very much. That's a great answer. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Paul, do you want to come off mute and there you go. You're off mute, but we're not hearing you speak, Paul. I know sometimes you have problems where you have to restart your Zoom session. Tell you what, I'm going to jump in with my other question. Paul, you might want to try restart rejoining or however, and then we'll circle back to you. My question is just time commitment. Obviously, you're no stranger to the need for phenomenal time commitment to the town, having served on FinCom. But I guess the question is, how have you managed it? How do you manage it? I think a lot of us understand that select board, FinCom, as another example, require phenomenal amounts. Possibly not just how much. How many hours a week do you anticipate spending on town stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an exact number of hours a week. I mean, I do, as you mentioned, I already spend a lot of hours on this stuff because I'm very passionate about it. I love the town, and I like it's really rewarding to me to be able to make a difference for people. And I think that that's been good, but it has been hard. I mean, it definitely is difficult, especially someone like me. I have two small kids. They're 11 and 8. So, or at least I still consider them small. I guess they're medium-sized kids now. I don't know. But it's hard. I mean, I'm fortunate that my wife is very supportive of the work that I'm doing, and stuff, and that I'm able to go to these meetings that are in the evenings and things like that. But a lot of people aren't. And I think that, kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning about just how difficult it is to understand where people are because of the nature of town government, right? I mean, if I'm elected to the select board right now, there's only one member of the select board who has kids in the schools, who has school age kids. If I am, there'll be two. But it's difficult because balance, and I've talked to Kristen, who you guys will hear from, like a lot about that as a parent of like, hey, what can I expect for being on this board? And she's, I mean, you can ask her, but she'll tell you like, it's not easy. It's not easy to be able to balance that and be able to put in the time to do this work. But I think for me, I'm fortunate. I have a pretty flexible job that is busy at times, but in other times is lower. I teach and at BU. That's actually where I am now. I'm able to. I've been able to balance it so far. I'm sure it's going to be even more of a challenge being on the select board. Because it is year round. It's not like finance committee that is more confined to particular times of the year. But I think we'll find a way through it, and just try to maintain balance too. I talked to someone who, I've like had a lot of coffees with people involved in town government, and one thing that someone said is like, look, it at the end of the day, like it is a volunteer position, and like you don't want to, you know, we have town staff to run the day-to-day of the town. That's not the select board's job. And so, I want to make sure that I'm making boundaries not only for my own benefit, but for the benefit of the town, that I'm not, trying to interfere with every little thing. That's not the select board's job. It's to provide, as Frank said earlier, right? It's policy. It's the big picture stuff. And so I want to try to stay focused on that, even though there's a lot of things that I have a lot of thoughts about, but I try to take a step back and be like, okay, like what can I focus on?
It's a good answer. Let's circle back to Paul. Paul, are we able to hear you? Do you have a question? It's unfortunate that we're still not hearing you, but keep working at it. I want to circle back, Catherine. I shut you down a little bit earlier just to, because we had other folks in line, but I don't see any other hands up. I know Frank returned to some of your topics with some of his questions, but do you have other things that you wanted to ask?
That's kind of you. I did. I think at this point I can let go of them and I can bring them up when I meet with Cody one-on-one.
Thank you for that.
That sounds
And
good.
Rick, you had also said, I've got other questions, but I'll cede the floor for now. Anything else that you want to bring up? You're on mute still, Rick. You got to come off if you want to speak.
No, thanks, Doug. They're all pretty minor issues. So, I mean, they're not minor issues, but they can wait. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
One
You know how to
thing
get a hold of me, so, yeah.
to Rick's point, and maybe you can educate us, Rick. I know you're planning a candidate forum focused on sustainability stuff through EcoNatick. Is that with both select board candidates and school committee, or just one or the other, or
Well,
we're still to be determined?
Probably the school committee. In the interest of time, last year, with your help, Doug, and with Susan Kang, who moderated, we were able to do 3 candidates live in the period of time of an hour and 15 minutes, and it was a great conversation. It didn't go on too long, and we had pretty good attendance at the start and at the end. So I hesitate to add to that the number of candidates, because it just waters down the conversation too much. And I think, as we see today, select board is it's a huge area, as a school committee. So, Kristen's an incumbent. She'll be here. There's a lot of overlap between the two. So right now, I guess finding a date and trying to do it with 2 people in a non-competitive, or add others as we did last year. We had very low attendance last year, and it didn't stay when we added all the non-competitive races in. So I'm thinking right now we won't.
Yeah.
Even though I had said to Cody, I think last week, as recently as last week, off the top of my head, that we'd invite him. I feel like I'm reneging on that. Sorry, Cody.
It's okay.
That's all right.
I mean, exposure, and we'll leave it with your 11 and 8-year-old. So,
yeah, no, it's okay. Brinley
I owe you a coffee if we meet. Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That does provide a forum here. Then just I think Bill was singing the praises of Jillian earlier, and you know, just back from introductions, Cody, you're well aware that a large majority of regular attendees in this morning's attendees have sustainability and environmental matters very much on their minds.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say about just how that role intersects with select board, or what,
Well,
what
Doug,
your thoughts are?
if there's time left, I could complete the thought later, I guess, about when the candidate forum is for school committee. It's the 24th in the evening at 7 o'clock. We'll send the link out widely to this group and others. Cody, the one thing you could talk about in talking about the general issue of sustainability, the puzzle that I have, you can decide to defer this to me if you want, is I don't understand how with tight funding we can be spending as much as we are on artificial turf fields at Cole and at the high school in one fiscal year. And, you know, the high school is a tier 2 expense. Cole desperately needs funding, and that I support that. But we're looking at in total, you know, $3 million, $3.2 million of, you know, capital expense if those things all get approved, and funds for these things in 1 year. And there's a very small 1.4% of DPW's budget is for general park and fields, you know, renovation.
Oh, yeah.
And I know there is a staff shortage. There's not a knowledge shortage in terms of how to take care of grass fields. Art Goodhind is a real pro, and I've spoken with him. He does not have the staff and or the equipment to do that. And this gets into the question that I think someone asked earlier about, you know, relative costs and looking at, you know, lifetime costs, which we've tried to do. There are so many variables in it that can be fiddled and diddled in terms of, you know, what it gets down to is you're investing in playable hours more than you are in a superior surface. Some people like artificial turf, some people hate it, you know. So it's, you know, it's a need to expand playable hours, but, you know, CPA money is available to completely, you know, redo a grass field. It's been done before in Natick at Memorial School in 2016. I think the problem then and the problem now is man hours. And I have a hard time understanding why.
Rick, let's let Cody address it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good question. I think like definitely to me, I mean, I think that, so just, you know, laying cards on the table, like I voted for the moratorium in the, you know, when it came before the finance committee and at town meeting, because I do think like it's worth having a pause before we certainly build new turf fields. I mean, it's one thing, as you said, to sort of separate out maintaining the existing ones that we have, but you know, I think that I did hear, you know, I do have definitely concerns, environmental concerns, long-term cost concerns, you know, things like that about the use of turf. And I think that we need to, you know, we need to continue that research, and we need to continue that conversation before we invest, as you said, millions of dollars in a new field. I also heard and learned a lot, you know, from the people who, you know, my kids are not sports kids, at least so far. So I didn't know as much about it, but from that debate and from talking to people about it, I did learn a lot about the need for fields, and the lack of field time, and the, you know, kind of the problems that creates. And I think it's really important to the fabric of our community to support youth sports here. You know, I think it's a big, I'm jealous of the people whose kids want to do it because it seems fun. But you know, I think it's I think it's really important that we support that, and that we can't turn a blind eye to that either. So I would like to see what we can do. You know, I think the select board has already started the process of sort of, you know, forming committees, or at least working collaboratively with people to gather info, you know, and collaborating with the school committee as well, because obviously this is a school and town issue. to sort of gather more information about this and try to come up with a comprehensive plan for our field space so that we can, both meet our field needs, but also not, endanger our environment and think about, as you said, the long-term costs of like, okay, what would it cost to maintain this over the life of the field, not just how much does it cost to initially install, right? And so just thinking about all of those costs altogether, as well as the environmental impacts, I think is something that we need to look at holistically. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic that we're starting that process. But as a select board member, I would definitely encourage us to look at this very carefully before we decide how to invest our money in solving our field problem.
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
Thanks for that answer. Man, I think Brinley and I must be mind readers or something. I was just thinking, we're approaching 10:30, so I want to thank Cody for his time, and I want to give him one last opportunity for any closing comments, and also definitely wanted to mention upcoming candidate forums. And sure enough, Brinley has just posted in the chat not only about the EcoNatick forum, but Yes for Natick will also be having a candidate forum. I think she had already put the link for that in. So there will continue to be lots of opportunities to hear from these candidates. But Cody, again, thanks so much for spending the time. Are there thoughts or messages you want to leave us with?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, thank you. This was really interesting conversation, as it always is with this group. And I appreciate you guys taking the time and asking your questions. I appreciate you hosting candidates for these. As I said, I think it's a really important public service that you guys provide. And I really appreciate it. I think I would ask you guys on all the things that you guys asked questions about. They were all great questions. I mean, most of you, I'm preaching to the choir already on this, but stay engaged and, tell that to the select board, tell it to the school committee, when these things come up, because, they do, one thing I have learned from, like I said, somebody asked me, what have I learned about being on the select board is that they read and respond to very carefully all of the things that they receive. And so like I think just staying engaged on these issues, like you can have such a huge impact on the direction of the way that things go in our town. But I guess I'll close by asking for one of your 2 votes for select board on March 31st. And make sure that you get out there and vote. If you want more information, if you want a yard sign, you can go to my website, which is codyfornatick.com. And of course, if you want to chat with me, I know a couple of you, Catherine, please email me. We can get together. But anyone who wants to, I'm happy to chat. And again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you, Doug, for moderating. Yeah, thank you guys. This has been great.
Thanks very much, Cody. So next week, we'll be turning our attention to the school committee. We'll have Matt Welsh, who's a new candidate, as I understand, for school committee speaking with us. I'm very happy to get to hear from him. And this is also the time when we generally turn it over to Brinley, but then others to update us on any other current events and meetings and things we need to be paying attention to over the next several days. Brinley, what's on the radar?
Sure. First, of course, I'll say thank you to Cody for being here and for running. And before I move into current events, I just would like to remind people that, again, so much of our town runs on volunteerism. Voting is a privilege. The least we can do is show up to vote. Even in uncontested races, it's really nice for them to know that people are paying attention and that we bother to show up and vote and support their efforts to volunteer for our town. We'd be in trouble if our town didn't have all these people willing to volunteer. So tonight is 2 school committee meetings. The first one is in person only, and it is the turf. Actually, that's not school committee. That is put together by the select board, but it is the turf. The turf field study group meets from 5 to 7 at town hall, and then there's a school committee meeting at 7. And then I did put in the chat the Yes for Natick link Their forum is March 16th at 7 p.m. and they will be having everybody. So they will have both the select board candidates and the 3 school committee candidates. And it is moderated by Natick Report, Bob and his wife, Deborah Brown. Will be moderating. They've done this for a few years now for them, and you can submit questions. So if you go to that link, Yes for Natick, you can actually submit your questions in advance to be included. And then on that Yes for Natick page, there's also a PDF where you can see the candidates' statements, and they are including everybody in that. So if you're running for town meeting and you want to put a statement in there about why you're running for town meeting, you can do that. So please look at that. And then I put the EcoNatick website in there because you can follow that space for updates, both for sustainability and also for the candidate climate conversations that Rick was talking about. I think that's it. Oh, yeah, I think that's good. We're good. Thank you.
Thanks. And then just as a logistical reminder for folks, all of these chats, if you don't get a chance to copy them out to your own computers, I recap them all in the description part of the videos. So when I get that up later today or tomorrow, those will be there for you to follow up with. So great.
Oh, one more.
Yeah.
I realized that there were over this past weekend there were a bunch of people who don't follow the snow removal and storm web page for the town, and so I had a lot of friends who were a bit missed, as it were, because they showed up to the recycling center this past weekend and it was closed. So if you go to the town website and sign up for those, you will get those kinds of notices, so you'll know whether or not places like the recycling center are open. I'm not sure if they're going to have it open again for Thursday, but I do anticipate that they would have it open again by this weekend in the least.
Great. Thanks for the public service announcement. Donna.
A quick announcement, just a reminder that it's an interfaith celebration month, and there are all kinds of wonderful activities. And I went to a great Shabbat dinner at Temple Israel on Friday evening, and it was so moving to actually see all of the pieces in the sanctuary that Jay Ball had made with the Ark builders and talked about at Coffee of the Purpose just a week before. So I just invite you to avail yourself of any of these activities if you can make it. There's a film on Dorothy Day at the Lutheran Church. There's a Hindu service that you can go to. It's really a wonderful opportunity to learn about our faith communities. Thanks.
Well, thanks for that reminder. And again, for anybody who missed last week or was there, just a reminder, Jay Ball's presentation on his Ark Builders group and the book, the amazing book that he and his son produced. There are copies of that book available for a $18 or multiple of $18 donation to the charity of your choice. Go ahead and make the donation and then see Ben Greenberg down at Debson's or me if you have any other questions about it. And you can have a copy of an amazing book. Great. Well, thanks, everybody. Good Monday morning. And enjoy the rest of the week. And we'll see you around town and next Monday.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.